Who was Jesus? Jesus, or Jesus Christ, is best known to people as the Jewish religious teacher whose life, death, and resurrection, as reported by the evangelists, are the basis of the Christian message of salvation. However, is it possible that the Christian message of salvation has been corrupted over the years with false misconceptions of how Jesus truly appeared? I think yes. In fact, history proves itself that we were led to believe Jesus was actually white instead of black for many periods of time. For example, in Hollywood cinema production films. With all the interpretations of Jesus, it causes one to think, could the multitudes of his appearance suggest that there is no scholarly agreement on the appearance of Jesus? Over the centuries, he has been depicted in a multitude of ways. Can we blame our generation for believing the misconception of Jesus' true identity, especially when public media outlets report him as the typical portrayal we've all been led to believe for many years?
Jesus was a white man too, but it's like he was a historical figure. I mean, that's a verifiable fact.
He was a historical figure. This statement about Jesus is about the only information provided as true from the perspective of Fox News. Here we have a conservative news outlet brainwashing society with a false notion of what truly represented Jesus. The woman seems confident in her response, as if she too believes the typical depiction we've all been led to believe. The sad part is that this is not even the first attempt in history of Jesus' depiction being falsely misinterpreted.
What do theologians say about the color of Jesus' skin?
Well, when we look at Jesus as a historical figure, you're talking about somebody from the first century who lived in the Middle East. So in all likelihood, he would have had an olive complexion.
What your Jesus looks like is up to you. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. I would agree that when you're talking about the historical Jesus, and Kelly during her segment, she took a moment to say that, we have historical evidence of what Jesus looked like. Yeah, he was an olive-skinned man because he was from first century Palestine. He likely had close-cropped dark hair and dark eyes and looked like his peers and contemporary.
But here, these same news reporters actually give America hope while delivering news that actually is somewhat believable. Here they make the claim that Jesus possibly could have been a different race from what he's typically depicted as.
Anyone who has studied the Bible and anyone who knows about the heritage or the roots of Jesus knows that he was a dark-skinned person and probably wasn't a white man.
He didn't come from Europe. He didn't come from North America. That's just not where he came from, so Jesus isn't white, and saying that is just wrong.
Even in popular culture, where here we have the beloved Muhammad Ali, where he questions the race of Jesus.
And I always ask my mother, I said, Mother, why is Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes?
That's a very interesting question. Why has Jesus been portrayed as this?
History tells us this.
This man right here, by the name of Elisha J. Israel, is an author that has wrote a book concerning why has Jesus' appearance been misconstrued throughout history. Now listen to him give reasoning as to why.
Well, I say in my book that Jesus is black because history tells us this, as well as the Bible. The Bible depicts him in Revelation chapter 1, verses 13 through 15, as a black man with woolly hair.
Story and change Santa from white to black.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. You can't take facts and then try to change them to fit some sort of a political agenda or a sensitivity agenda.
Even more strange and ironic with this statement, the woman represents a company that is notorious for twisting facts in broadcasting the news daily and offering their conservative views on many controversial events that we see on the news daily. Could the race of Jesus be easily dismissed as black by our world because of the oppression African Americans have endured for so long? If we weren't oppressed and at a social disadvantage, would Jesus' color even matter to most? An individual was questioned if racial discrimination against African Americans and the supremacy of white people throughout history could have played a role in why many denounce Jesus to have been black. He believes yes.
Do you think that it has something to do with any racial discrimination?
I would say yes. The prejudice aspect of it.
Another individual was questioned as well, and here is his following responses to the following questions.
Hello, I am conducting a social experiment. I am going around asking people if they can identify a significant historical figure in history. May I show you a picture of him, sir?
Sure, of course.
Can you please tell me who this individual is?
That's Jesus. That's Jesus. That's Jesus. That's Jesus.
Is this truly Jesus? Have we been told lies? Have we been lied to all this entire time of the true depiction of Christ?
I believe Jesus is white. I also believe he has long brown hair with a giant beard. That's what I think he looks like. Just based off of how the people let us know how he looks like.
Doesn't this sound very familiar?
History tells us this, as well as the Bible.
Here you have a young man whose conception of Jesus is obviously different from that of which Mr. Israel was just previously arguing.
Jesus is white. He has long brown hair.
A black man with woolly hair.
But why does this young man believe this? To be honest, I do not know the answer to this question. But maybe cough, America, cough, Hollywood, cough, pastors every day preaching to these young innocent people. Now, with everything that has been presented upon you taken to further consideration, this book that has been written by this gentleman of the name Elisha. This book may certainly reshape the way in which you look at the scriptures. After reading this book, you may never look at the images of a white Christ the same. Furthermore, it will be even more difficult to accept the false doctrines that accompany the false image. It is certainly the intent of the author to invoke mental insurgency concerning much of what is taught about the most significant figure in human history, that being Jesus. Also, continue to hear Mr. Israel sound off below with the following questions.
If we read in Revelation 1 and verse 13, it says, "In the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to his foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters." So the scriptures tell us that of his color, but not only that, when you go to the first images of Christ, he's depicted as a black man. You can go to the catacombs in Italy, and you will see some of the first images of Christ, and he's depicted the same way as he is in Revelation 1, verses 13 through 15. So that's why I do it, because I'm dedicated to the truth.
Now you say in your book that Jesus is black. Why is this important?
Well, if his color didn't matter, we must ask the question, why has there been such a concerted effort to change his color? No, imagery is in many ways just as important as the words that we speak. He who controls the image controls the mind. And when you're talking about an enslaved people, like the so-called African American in this country, the color of Jesus absolutely matters. All the way from the times of slavery, we have been told that Jesus was a white man when we came here. So what does our mind do? Subconsciously, it tells us that this slave master or this white oppressor is either God himself or God's representative here on this earth. So when we see God in our minds, just think of the impact it would have if we actually saw that he looked just like us. That would impact the way we look at ourselves and the way in which we look at each other. And quite frankly, it's just simply the truth. When you look at the scriptures, not only was Jesus black, but when you're talking about the children of Israel, they're black. You're talking about black people all throughout the scriptures.
If what you say is true concerning the color of Jesus, there has been a concerted effort to portray Jesus as white. Why do you think that this is the case?
Again, how do I justify the enslavement of black people in this country and then also say in the same breath that Jesus is a black man? You see, or God in the flesh was a black man. You see, it's been used to enslave and colonize the mind, just like when the scriptures are taken out of context. And when you hear false doctrines such as, black people were cursed in their skin and therefore they became black, or so-called Ham's curse. See, religion has been used throughout history to justify slavery, all the way from the times of the papal bulls of the Catholic Church to justify the transatlantic slave trade, all the way into the plantations in this country where even black preachers were used to perpetuate a false doctrine, a false Christianity, as well as a false Christ. Those were, in order to enslave people, you need to enslave them mentally. And one thing that can be done with the Bible You can be freed spiritually and sometimes use it for physical liberation, or if it's used in an improper way, it can be used to enslave spiritually as well as keep one enslaved physically, which we saw for hundreds of years in this country.
Now, what else is this book about?
This book is not just about the color of Christ. This book is also about various aspects of him, because that's just a simple thing, what he actually looked like. It's important, but it's a simple thing. I also deal with, again, various aspects. For instance, he is our Passover. He's the Passover lamb. Just like the children of Israel had to come under the blood of a Passover lamb to escape the wrath of the destroying angels, so must we come under the blood of Jesus to escape the wrath of God. He is our atonement. Reconciliation between God and man is only made through the shedding of blood, and therefore it is the shedding of the Messiah's blood that we gain atonement. He is also our high priest, sitting at the right hand of the Father, making intercession for us. You see, he came with not the blood of bulls and of goats, but he sacrificed his own. He's also a King of kings. He told Pilate, "For this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world." When he asked whether he was a king, he said, "My kingdom is not of this world. For if it were time for my kingdom, then will my servants fight." Okay, so he is a king. He was born to be king. He's also a high priest, as I stated. I talk about him being an actual figure in history, because you have many who say he never existed, which is ludicrous. So I deal with various aspects of Christ.
Have you ever written any other books whatsoever?
Yes, I have 4 books in total. Into Egypt Again with Ships. That was my first book. That is a book where I use history and the Bible to identify who the so-called African Americans are. We, contrary to popular belief, are the children of Israel. When you look at the scriptures and you look at the curses that were placed upon Israel, we find that we fit those curses, even going down to Deuteronomy 28 and 68, where we read about the transatlantic slave trade. My second book, Killing Black Innocents, is a book about the efforts to control black population from the time of slavery, when we were bred like cattle, up until after slavery, right after slavery, when you saw these eugenic programs to cut down our numbers, and going up into the current time, when we are literally committing genocide against ourselves. Because when you look at the abortion rates, we've killed, through abortion, 25% of our population, that which would equate to 25% of our population through abortion. That's more than HIV/AIDS, that's more than ever died through violent crime and other various diseases. So, you know, that was that book. I felt a moral imperative to write that book. My next book was The Pagan Origins of Christian Holidays, in which I deal with the origins of all the days in Christianity, from Sunday worship to Christmas to Easter. All these days, when you look at them, when you tear off or wipe off the veneer of what the Catholic Church has placed upon them, you will find that they are extremely pagan, and they are antithetical and contrary to the scriptures. Okay, my last book, Hair Like Wool, Feet Like Burned Brass, deals with the color of Jesus and other burning truths concerning him, as I mentioned earlier.